he told the Faery that his only object was "to further your Majesty's wishes in this matter." When he brought off his great coup over the Suez Canal, he used expressions which implied that the only gainer by the transaction was Victoria. "It is just settled," he wrote in triumph. "You have it, madam, 4,000,000 sterling, and almost immediately. There was only one firm that could do it, Rothschild's. They behaved admirably, advanced the money at a low rate, and the entire interest of the Khedive is now yours, madam." Nor did he limit himself to highly spiced insinuations. Writing with all the authority of his office, he advised the Queen that she had the constitutional right to dismiss a Ministry which was supported by a large majority in the House of Commons. He even urged her to do so if, in her opinion, "Your Majesty's Government have, from wilfulness, or even from weakness, deceived your Majesty." To the horror of Mr. Gladstone, he not only kept the Queen informed as to the general course of business in the Cabinet, but revealed to her the part taken in its discussions by individual members of it. Lord Derby, the son of the late Prime Minister and Disraeli's Foreign Secretary, viewed these developments with grave mistrust. "Is there not," he ventured to write to his chief, "just a risk of encouraging her in too large ideas of her personal power, and too great indifference to what the public expects? I only ask; it is for you to judge." As for Victoria, she accepted everything, compliments, flatteries, Elizabethan prerogatives, without a single qualm. After the long gloom of her bereavement, after the chill of the Gladstonian discipline, she expanded to the rays of Disraeli's devotion like a flower in the sun. The change in her situation was indeed miraculous. No longer was she obliged to puzzle for hours over the complicated details of business, for now she had only to ask Mr. Disraeli for an explanation, and he would give it her in the most concise, in the most amusing way. No longer was she worried by alarming novelties; no longer was she put out at finding herself treated by a reverential gentleman in high collars as if she were some embodied precedent with a recondite knowledge of Greek. And her deliverer was surely the most fascinating of men. The strain of charlatanism which had unconsciously captivated her in Napoleon III exercised the same enchanting effect in the case of Disraeli. Like a dram drinker whose ordinary life is passed in dull sobriety, her unsophisticated intelligence gulped down his rococo allurements with peculiar zest. She became intoxicated, entranced. Believing all that he told her of herself, she completely regained the self-confidence which had been slipping away from her throughout the dark period that followed Albert's death. She swelled with a new elation, while he, conjuring up before her wonderful Oriental visions, dazzled her eyes with an imperial grandeur of which she had only dimly dreamed. Under the compelling influence, her very demeanour altered. Her short, stout figure, with its folds of black velvet, its muslin streamers, its heavy pearls at the heavy neck, assumed an almost menacing air. In her countenance, from which the charm of youth had long since vanished, and which had not yet been softened by age, the traces of grief, of disappointment, and of displeasure were still visible, but they were overlaid by looks of arrogance and sharp lines of peremptory hauteur. Only when Mr. Disraeli appeared the expression changed in an instant, and the forbidding visage became charged with smiles. For him she would do anything. Yielding to his encouragements, she began to emerge from her seclusion. She appeared in London in semi-state at hospitals and concerts. She opened Parliament. She reviewed troops and distributed medals at Aldershot. But such public signs of favour were trivial in comparison with her private attentions. During his hours of audience she could hardly restrain her excitement and delight. "I can only describe my reception," he wrote to a friend on one occasion, "by telling you that I really thought she was going to embrace me. She was wreathed with smiles, and as she tattled, glided about the room like a bird." In his absence she talked of him perpetually, and there was a note of unusual vehemence in her solicitude for his health. "John Manners," Disraeli told Lady Bradford, "who has just come from Osborne, says that the Faery only talked of one subject, and that was her primo. According to him, it was her gracious opinion that the Government should make my health a Cabinet question. Dear John seemed quite surprised at what she said, but you are used to these ebullitions." She often sent him presents. An illustrated album arrived for him regularly from Windsor on Christmas Day. But her most valued gifts were the bunches of spring flowers which, gathered by herself and her ladies in the woods at Osborne, marked in an especial manner the warmth and tenderness of her sentiments. Among these it was, he declared, the primroses that he loved the best. They were, he said, "the ambassadors of spring, the gems and jewels of nature." He liked them, he assured her, "so much better for their being wild. They seem an offering from the fauns and dryads of Osborne. They show," he told her, "that your Majesty's sceptre has touched the enchanted isle." He sat at dinner with heaped up bowls of them on every side, and told his guests that "they were all sent to me this morning by the Queen from Osborne, as she knows it is my favourite flower." As time went on, and as it became clearer and clearer that the Faery's thraldom was complete, his protestations grew steadily more highly coloured and more unabashed. At last he ventured to import into his blandishments a strain of adoration that was almost avowedly romantic. In phrases of baroque convolution he conveyed the message of his heart. "The pressure of business," he wrote, had "so absorbed and exhausted him that towards the hour of post he has not had clearness of mind and vigour of pen adequate to convey his thoughts and facts to the most loved and illustrious being who deigns to consider them." She sent him some primroses, and he replied that he could "truly say they are more precious than rubies, coming as they do and at such a moment from a sovereign whom he adores." She sent him snowdrops, and his sentiment overflowed into poetry. "Yesterday eve," he wrote, "there appeared in Whitehall Gardens a delicate-looking case with a royal superscription, which, when he opened, he thought at first that your Majesty had graciously bestowed upon him the stars of your Majesty's principal orders." And indeed he was so impressed with this graceful allusion that, having a banquet where there were many stars and ribbons, he could not resist the temptation, by placing some snowdrops on his heart, of showing that he too was decorated by a gracious sovereign. Then, in the middle of the night, it occurred to him that it might all be an enchantment, and that perhaps it was a fairy gift and came from another monarch, Queen Titania, gathering flowers with her court in a soft and sea-girt isle, and sending magic blossoms which, they say, turn the heads of those who receive them. A fairy gift! Did he smile as he wrote the words? Perhaps. And yet it would be rash to conclude that his perfervid declarations were altogether without sincerity. Actor and spectator both, the two characters were so intimately blended together in that odd composition that they formed an inseparable unity, and it was impossible to say that one of them was less genuine than the other. With one element he could coldly appraise the Faery's intellectual capacity, note with some surprise that she could be on occasion "most interesting and amusing," and then continue his use of the trowel with an ironical solemnity; while with the other he could be overwhelmed by the immemorial panoply of royalty, and, thrilling with the sense of his own strange elevation, dream himself into a gorgeous fantasy of crowns and powers and chivalric love. When he told Victoria that "during a somewhat romantic and imaginative life nothing has ever occurred to him so interesting as this confidential correspondence with one so exalted and so inspiring," was he not in earnest after all? When he wrote to a lady about the court, "I love the Queen, perhaps the only person in this world left to me that I do love," Was he not creating for himself an enchanted palace out of the Arabian Nights, full of melancholy